Okay, prepare yourselves, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound unbelievable, maybe even cruel, but I swear on everything I hold dear, every single word is the absolute truth. I was faced with an impossible choice, a situation no parent should ever have to endure, and when it came down to it, my own children, my flesh and blood, chose a party, yes, a party, over my very life. So I did the only thing I could do. I left them. I cut them out. Was I wrong? Was I truly the villain in this story? Or would any of you, in your darkest moments, have done the exact same thing? Tell me. Tell me honestly, because I've replayed it 1,000 times in my head, and I still don't know if I could have done anything differently. Let me take you back to a time before all this heartache, when my life, at least on the surface, seemed idyllic. I'm a retired teacher, a widow for over a decade now. My husband, bless his soul, was the love of my life, and after he passed, my children became my world. I have 2 sons, Michael and David, and a daughter, Sarah. They were my pride and joy, or so I thought. I poured every ounce of my being into raising them, sacrificing my own dreams, working extra jobs to ensure they had every opportunity. I taught them right from wrong, instilled in them the importance of family, loyalty, and compassion. Or so I believed. My relationship with them, up until a few years ago, was what I considered close. We had weekly family dinners, celebrated every holiday together, and they'd call me regularly just to check in. I babysat my grandchildren whenever needed, and I loved every minute of it. My home was always open, a sanctuary for them, filled with laughter, good food, and the warmth of a mother's love. I prided myself on being a supportive, loving, and present parent and grandparent. My life revolved around them, and I genuinely believed that feeling was reciprocated. This delusion, I now realize, was my biggest mistake. This blissful ignorance was about to be shattered in the most brutal way imaginable, starting subtly, then building into an avalanche that would bury everything I held dear. The cracks began to show when Michael, my eldest, married Jessica. Jessica was a force, beautiful, ambitious, and with a personality that demanded attention. From the outset, I tried to welcome her into the family with open arms. I hosted a bridal shower, helped with wedding planning, and offered advice whenever asked, though it was rarely taken. I wanted to love her, to treat her like my own daughter, but there was always a distance, a chill that I couldn't quite place. She was polite, overly so sometimes, but I never felt genuine warmth from her. It felt performative, a calculated display for Michael's benefit. I tried to overlook it, telling myself that not everyone immediately clicks, and that given time, we would bond. Time, however, only seemed to widen the chasm. Her influence over Michael grew exponentially after they married. He, who used to call me every other day, now barely managed a weekly check-in. Family dinners became less frequent, often canceled last minute with flimsy excuses. When they did attend, Jessica would subtly steer the conversation, dictate when they left, and even dictate what Michael ate. It was a slow, insidious takeover, and I watched my son, once so independent and thoughtful, become a shadow of himself, seemingly controlled by his new wife's whims. My other son, David, and my daughter, Sarah, didn't seem to notice, or perhaps they chose not to. They were both busy with their own lives, their own growing families. David, a successful engineer, was always caught up in his work, and his wife, Emily, was sweet but timid, rarely speaking up. Sarah, my youngest, was a free spirit, always chasing new adventures, and while she loved me fiercely, she often had her head in the clouds. I tried to voice my concerns to them, gently, carefully, about Michael's changing demeanor, about the increasing distance. They'd brush it off, telling me I was overthinking, that it was just Michael settling into married life. But my gut, that undeniable mother's instinct, screamed otherwise. The true turning point, the moment I saw the first clear glimpse into the abyss, came with Michael and Jessica's first child, my grandson Ethan. I was ecstatic. I envisioned myself as the doting grandmother, showering him with love, baking cookies, reading stories. But Jessica had other plans. She micromanaged every aspect of Ethan's life, from his diet to his clothes to his schedule. My offers to babysit were politely but firmly declined, often with excuses about Ethan needing a specific routine I wouldn't understand. I was allowed supervised visits, almost like a scheduled appointment, and even then, I felt like I was being judged, scrutinized for every interaction. It broke my heart, but I tried to respect her boundaries, even as those boundaries felt like a cage around my relationship with my grandson. I remember one particular incident vividly. It was Ethan's first birthday. I had spent weeks knitting a beautiful, intricate blanket for him, a labor of love filled with countless hours and prayers for his happiness. When I presented it at the party, Jessica took one look, gave a tight smile, and immediately placed it in a pile of other gifts without a word of thanks, then handed Ethan a garish, noisy plastic toy she'd bought. Later, I saw her whispering to Michael, glancing at me. I overheard her say, "It's just not his style, Michael. We prefer organic, natural materials for his things." The dismissal, the open disdain, stung more than I could articulate. Michael, instead of defending me, just nodded along, a sheepish look on his face. It was a pattern that repeated itself with every gift, every attempt I made to connect. My efforts were met with polite rejection, subtle criticism, or outright disregard. Jessica's influence wasn't just about Michael, it was slowly seeping into the entire family dynamic. She orchestrated family gatherings, always at her house, always on her terms. My home, once the central hub, was gradually relegated to a secondary status. My suggestions for holidays or events were often overridden by her better ideas. It felt like a subtle power play, a systematic erosion of my matriarchal role within my own family, and my children, blinded by their own lives or perhaps just too conflict-averse, let it happen. Then came the health issues. It started insidiously, a persistent fatigue, a dull ache that wouldn't go away. I dismissed it as old age, as stress, as anything but something serious. I'm a strong woman, always have been, and I rarely complain. But the symptoms worsened. I started losing weight without trying, my energy levels plummeted, and the pain became more insistent, a constant companion. Finally, after weeks of feeling increasingly unwell, I went to my doctor. The tests, the scans, the agonizing wait, it felt like an eternity. The day the results came back, my doctor called me in personally. His face was grim, his words measured, but the gravity of them hit me like a physical blow. Cancer. A particularly aggressive form. Stage 3. It had spread. My world, already feeling a little off-kilter, violently spun out of control. I remember the air being sucked out of the room, the doctor's voice becoming a distant hum. All I could think of was my husband, how much I missed him, how I wished he was there to hold my hand. I was terrified. Truly, deeply terrified. The doctor outlined the treatment plan: aggressive chemotherapy, radiation, possibly surgery. It would be a grueling battle, he warned, but there was hope. I would need support, constant care during the worst of the treatments. I would be weak, nauseous, unable to care for myself fully. My first thought, naturally, was my children. They would be there for me, wouldn't they? They were my family. This was what family was for, right? To rally around each other in times of crisis. So, that's the situation I was in. I had just received a life-altering diagnosis, and I knew, absolutely knew, I couldn't face this alone. I was a woman staring down the barrel of a loaded gun, and I needed my children, my support system, to stand with me. Before I tell you what happened next, what choice they made, what unimaginable betrayal I faced, I want you to pause. Put yourself in my shoes. Imagine getting that news. Imagine knowing you need help, real, tangible help, to survive. What would you do? What would you expect from your family? More importantly, what would you tolerate from them? Comment below. Tell me, honestly, what you would have done in my situation, what you would have expected. I'm genuinely curious if anyone out there can truly understand the depths of this particular pain. I called them, separately at first, then gathered them together for a family meeting at my house. I wanted to tell them in person, to see their faces, to gauge their reactions, to feel their love and concern wash over me. I tried to be brave, to deliver the news with as much composure as I could muster, but my voice trembled and tears welled in my eyes as I explained the diagnosis, the severity of it, and the difficult road ahead. I looked at their faces, searching for empathy, for understanding. Michael looked shocked, David's eyes widened, and Sarah, my sweet Sarah, started to cry, reaching for my hand. A small flicker of hope ignited within me. They do care, I thought. They'll be there. Then I explained the practicalities. The weeks of chemo, the nausea, the fatigue. I would need someone to take me to appointments, to help with meals, to just be present when I was at my weakest. I wasn't asking for round-the-clock nursing care, just a rotation, a schedule where each of them could contribute a few hours a week, maybe take turns staying with me overnight after a particularly rough treatment. I know you all have your own lives, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But this is life or death for me. I need my family. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched, heavy and awkward, punctuated only by Sarah's sniffles. Michael cleared his throat first. Mom, that's terrible news. We're so sorry. His words felt hollow, a practiced response. Of course, we'll help. Whatever you need. But his eyes darted nervously towards the door. Then, Jessica, who had joined Michael, stepped forward, her expression a mix of forced sympathy and thinly veiled irritation. It's a very busy time for us, Margaret. Ethan has his preschool applications, and Michael has that big project at work. Plus, she paused, a dramatic sigh escaping her lips. It's my 40th birthday soon, and we're planning a rather significant celebration. A huge surprise party, actually. My heart sank. A party? Was she seriously bringing up a party right now? I tried to push down the surge of anger. Jessica, I understand it's a busy time for everyone, but this is different. This isn't just about convenience. This is about my health, my survival. David, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. Mom, maybe we can look into hiring some professional help? A nurse, a caregiver? We could all chip in financially. I looked at him, utterly deflated. David, it's not just about physical care. It's about emotional support. It's about having my children around me. I don't want a stranger. Sarah, bless her heart, spoke up, her voice a little shaky. I'll help, Mom. I can definitely take some shifts. My job is flexible. Her words were a small balm to my wounded spirit, but it wasn't enough. I needed all of them. Thank you, Sarah, I said, squeezing her hand. That means the world to me. But the others remained quiet, exchanging uneasy glances. The conversation devolved into a series of vague promises and excuses. Michael reiterated his work commitments and Jessica's party plans. David talked about his demanding schedule and Emily's inability to help much due to caring for their own 2 young children. They were creating a wall of excuses, subtly but surely pushing me away. The party, Jessica's 40th birthday bash, became the elephant in the room, growing larger and more imposing with every passing moment. It was scheduled for the exact week I was due to start my most intensive round of chemotherapy, the one my doctor had warned me would be the most debilitating. I knew I would be completely incapacitated, unable to do anything for myself. Could the party be moved? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Just that one weekend, perhaps? Jessica's eyes narrowed, her pleasant facade cracking. Margaret, this party has been months in the making. Invitations have gone out, a venue booked, caterers confirmed. It's simply impossible to reschedule. It would be an enormous waste of money and effort. Michael nodded in agreement, avoiding my gaze. She's right, Mom. It's all set in stone. I looked at my sons, my grown men, the boys I had nurtured and raised, and I saw strangers. They were choosing a party, a superficial celebration, over their dying mother. It wasn't just the party itself. It was the blatant disregard for my suffering, the casual dismissal of my desperate plea for help, the utter lack of priority they placed on my life. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. The following weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, tests, and a growing sense of dread. My children remained distant. Sarah called frequently, offering what comfort she could, but she too had her own life, her own family, and couldn't shoulder the entire burden alone. Michael and David's calls became rarer, shorter, filled with perfunctory questions about my health, always followed by quick excuses to hang up. I heard snippets about Jessica's party plans, the guest list, the elaborate theme, the lavish decorations. It was all they seemed to talk about, oblivious to the fact that their mother was facing her own mortality, alone. As the date of my first chemo treatment, and coincidentally, Jessica's party, approached, I made one last-ditch effort. I called Michael. "Son," I said, my voice heavy with emotion, "I'm starting my intensive treatment on Friday. The doctor said I'll be very sick. I just need one of you, just one, to be here to check on me, to bring me some water, whatever I need." He hesitated. "Mom, you know Jessica's party is that weekend. It's a huge event. I can't just not be there. I'm the host. So, you're choosing a party over your mother's well-being?" I asked, the words raw, tearing from my throat. "It's not like that, Mom. It's just bad timing. We'll visit you the next week, I promise." "The next week," I echoed hollowly. "If there is a next week." I hung up. The conversation with David was equally disheartening. He mumbled something about needing to be at the party for Michael, for family solidarity. "It's important to support your brother, Mom," he'd said, as if my very existence wasn't the more pressing family matter. Sarah, when I spoke to her, was in tears. "Mom, I want to be there," she sobbed. "But Michael and Jessica are really pushing for all of us to be there." Jessica called me yesterday, practically demanding I show up. She said it would look bad if any of us weren't there for her special day. That was the moment it clicked into place. It wasn't just my sons making this choice. Jessica was orchestrating it. She was using her party, her special day, as a weapon, a test of loyalty, forcing them to choose between her and me. And they chose her. They chose the optics, the celebration, the path of least resistance. They chose a party over their mother's life. That night, lying in my bed, tears streaming down my face, I felt a cold, hard resolve settle within me. A profound shift occurred. The despair gave way to a chilling clarity. If my children were willing to abandon me at my most vulnerable, at the precipice of life and death, then they had already abandoned me in their hearts. The mother they once had, the woman who would do anything for them, was no longer their priority. And if I wasn't their priority, then why should they be mine? The anger was a slow burn, but it solidified into a powerful force. This wasn't just about a party. It was about respect, about love, about the fundamental bond between parent and child. It was about seeing clearly for the first time that my selfless devotion had been taken for granted, trampled upon, and ultimately discarded. I decided then and there that I would fight this cancer, not just for myself, but to spite them. To show them that I didn't need their paltry support, their hollow promises, their conditional love. I would survive, and I would do it without them. The day of my first intensive chemotherapy session arrived. I drove myself to the hospital, a bag packed with essentials, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. I felt utterly alone, vulnerable, and yet a strange sense of defiance simmered beneath the surface. I checked in, went through the procedures, and then settled into the infusion chair, the sterile scent of the hospital air filling my nostrils. As the 4-drip began, pumping poison and hope into my veins, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Sarah. "Thinking of you, Mom. Wish I could be there." A few minutes later, another text, this one from Michael. A picture. A picture of Jessica, beaming, surrounded by David, Emily, and Sarah, all dressed in party attire, raising glasses in a toast. The backdrop was a lavishly decorated hall. The caption, from Michael, read, "Happy 40th, Jess. So glad we could all be here to celebrate you." The sight of it was a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the picture. It was the timing, the utter thoughtlessness of sending it to me, knowing where I was, what I was enduring. They were all there, celebrating, laughing, while I lay in a hospital chair, fighting for my life, alone. The rage that erupted within me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just disappointment anymore. It was pure, unadulterated fury. My own children, my family had made their choice. And that choice was a party. My hands trembled, not from the chemo, but from the raw emotion coursing through me. I picked up my phone, my fingers flying across the keyboard, a cold determination replacing my despair. I typed out a message to Michael, then copied it to David, and then, after a moment's hesitation, to Sarah. I hope you all had a wonderful time at Jessica's party. I'm currently receiving chemotherapy. As you've all clearly prioritized a celebration over your dying mother, consider this my final word. I'm removing you all from my will. You will receive nothing from me. Furthermore, I want no contact from any of you. Do not call, do not text, do not visit. You chose your path, and I'm choosing mine. I wish you all happiness with your new priorities. I am officially done. I press send. Then, with a shaking hand, I blocked all their numbers. Every single one. I unfriended them on social media. I deleted their contact information. It was an act of severance, surgical and brutal, but it felt necessary. It felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself from the wreckage. The nurses, bustling around, would occasionally glance at me, but I kept my face impassive, a mask of control over the storm raging within. I finished my treatment, drove myself home, and collapsed into bed, physically and emotionally drained. The following weeks and months were a grueling battle against cancer. The chemotherapy was brutal, stripping me of my hair, my energy, and at times, my will. But something had changed within me. The rage, the righteous indignation, fueled a fierce determination. I refused to let them win by letting this disease consume me. I found strength I never knew I possessed. I relied on myself, on the kindness of a few old friends, and on the quiet resilience I had cultivated over a lifetime. I hired a caregiver for the days I was truly incapacitated, a kind woman named Eleanor, who became a lifeline. I ate nourishing meals, followed my doctor's orders meticulously, and found solace in my garden, in books, in quiet moments of reflection. I didn't reach out to my children, and they, true to their choice, didn't reach out to me. There were voicemails from Sarah on my old answering machine before I changed my number, pleading, crying, asking for forgiveness. I didn't listen to them. My resolve was iron. I had drawn a line in the sand, and they had crossed it. After months of grueling treatment, against all odds, I entered remission. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. I had beaten it. I had survived. And I had done it alone. The victory was bittersweet. I had my life, but I had lost my children. My home, once filled with their memories, now felt eerily silent. My grandchildren, whom I adored, were now strangers, their faces fading from my mind. I changed my will, as I had promised. Every penny, every asset, went to charities, to distant relatives, to Eleanor, the caregiver who had shown me more compassion than my own flesh and blood. Nothing went to Michael, David, or Sarah. I closed that chapter of my life, locked it away, and tried to move forward. Over the next year, I rebuilt my life. I traveled, something I had always dreamed of doing with my husband. I joined clubs, volunteered, made new friends. I found a sense of peace, a quiet contentment that was untainted by the constant striving for my children's approval, their attention. The occasional pang of loneliness, the fleeting thought of a grandchild's laugh, would surface, but I quickly pushed them away. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. One day, a few years after the initial cutoff, I received a letter. It was from Michael's attorney. He had somehow found my new address. The letter was formal, stiff, informing me that Michael and Jessica were divorcing and that Michael was in financial difficulty. He was requesting, through his attorney, a reconsideration of my will. He needed support, he said, citing my moral obligation as a mother. I laughed. A cold, bitter laugh that surprised even myself. Moral obligation? Where was his moral obligation when I was fighting for my life? I shredded the letter. There was also an email from Sarah, sent to an old email address I rarely checked. It was a long, heartfelt apology, expressing regret, admitting she was pressured by Jessica, begging for a second chance. My heart ached for a moment, a brief, sharp pang of what could have been. But the wounds were too deep, the betrayal too profound. I knew that even if I forgave them, the trust would never be fully restored. The image of them celebrating while I received chemo was forever etched into my mind. I deleted the email. My children chose a party over my life. They made that choice, clearly and unequivocally. And I, in turn, made my choice. I chose myself. I chose my peace. I chose to live, and to live without them. So, here I am, still standing, still breathing, still living. The cancer is in remission. My health is stable, and my life, though different from what I envisioned, is mine again. It's a life I fought for, alone, a life I clawed back from the brink. The silence in my home is no longer empty. It's filled with the quiet hum of my own resilience. The memories, once painful, are now just echoes, reminders of a past that shaped me but no longer defines me. I carry the scars, yes, but also the strength that came from enduring the unimaginable. There's a part of me that sometimes wonders fleetingly if I was too harsh, if forgiveness would have been the right thing to do. But then I remember that cold hospital room, the burning venom of the chemo, and that photograph of them, laughing, celebrating, oblivious to my suffering. And the doubt vanishes. They made their bed, and I am not obligated to lie in it with them. I found my own path, my own peace, without them. So, tell me, was I wrong? Was I the villain for protecting myself, for choosing my own survival and peace over a relationship that had become toxic and conditional? I've shared my story, raw and unfiltered. Now it's your turn. Like this video if you were on my side, if you understand the impossible choice I faced. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories that delve into the deepest, most complex corners of family dynamics and human relationships. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I want to hear what you think. I'll see you all in the next story.